Grace and peace be unto you from God our Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ. I am so excited to present this strong black men, these strong fathers who have agreed to sit on this panel with me. And what we're going to discuss on this roundtable is reimagine the black man. And we want to confront toxic masculinity. And we all are looking around the world right now, particularly here in the United States. There's a lot going on, particularly with law enforcement and communities of color. We need to really examine why when people look at black men, they have a certain perception. Now, I raise these things not to bring division, because anyone who knows me knows I am a strong advocate for racial reconciliation. I'm a strong advocate because we need our white brothers and sisters to join hands with us so that we can dismantle white privilege and white supremacy. But we have to have the honest conversation around why black male bodies are viewed the way they are. And even amongst black men, why we have certain negative views amongst black women, why there's certain negative views. So we're going to get into it. We're going to have a real honest dialogue. I've invited some awesome men to join with me today. Let me first introduce the man immediately right up under me. This is Reverend Zolly Smith. He's a retired Assemblies of God pastor and has served in executive leadership in the Assemblies of God. And I'm proud to call him Papa and a mentor to me. He and his wife resides in Florida. He has served in a variety of capacities. He actually has also served in law enforcement, both at the local level and the federal level. And so I would love to hear some of his perspective, as well as the military. So he is definitely has some perspective here. Immediately next to me, we have the Reverend Dr. Kenneth Clark Sr., who is the director of the Ithaca-Tompkins County Department of Human Rights, former director of Cornell United Religious Works at Cornell University. He is my godfather, and he and his wife have walked with me for 19 years. Wow, a long time. A tremendous man of God, and also my fraternity brother, so Alpha Phi Alpha, yes. A5. And then immediately under him is my brother, my Kush, as we call each other, Pastor Antonio Jones Sr. He is a tremendous leader, one of our mighty men at the Rock ATL, has been walking with me in ministry for many years. And in the marketplace, he serves as a healthcare administrator. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Black Kings, for agreeing to be with me today. And we're going to jump right in. I have a few questions that I've given you all, and we're going to jump in and start this dialogue. So from the jump, I want to ask you this. Now, many black men and black kings have been taught not to show emotions because real men don't cry. Now, this is an example of a traditional view about masculinity that has caused more damage than benefit. I want to ask you, what do you think is another traditional view that has hurt black men and those that's connected to them?
I think one of those traditional views is related to a confusion about the role of headship in the household. I think in many ways, men have, and sometimes women, but mostly men, have misread Ephesians 5:25-28, where it talks about husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it, because Christ is the head of the church and so forth, making an analogy between Christ's love for the church and the love that a man should have for his wife. But there's a way in which somehow it gets twisted, this notion that black men sometimes see headship as hierarchy, power to be exercised over their wives. They don't see headship as a way to cultivate their relationships with their wives. And I mean, when you read, for instance, the Message translation of the Bible, I'm going to read, which I'm going to read for you, and that passage that from Ephesians. It says, husbands, go all out in your love for your wives, exactly as Christ did for the church. A love marked by giving, not getting. Christ's love makes the church whole. His words evoke her beauty. Everything he does and says is designed to bring out the best of her, out of her, dressing her in dazzling white silk, radiant with holiness. And that is how husbands ought to love their wives. They're really doing themselves a favor since they're already one in marriage. You know, my Old Testament professor in divinity school taught us a key lesson, that this passage that a key lesson of this passage has to do with the fact that the husband and the wife are to be the source of each other and are to submit to each other in love. So headship is not about hierarchy and domination, but it's about love. It's about relationship.
I'm going to echo the sentiments. Actually, what I written down on my paper was that we oftentimes misinterpret the term leadership as if leadership is not connected with being submissive in the household. With your spouse. In order to lead, and if you're married, in order to be the leader and the head, you have to be submissive to your wife at times as well, to your family, to your kids. And I think we misinterpret what the true definition of leadership is. And in the church, I think it's the exact same way. We look at leadership as being a position of power. But oftentimes I think of the mindset of a lot of Black men is to jump directly into leadership with not ever having to serve. And I think to be a servant is what the foundation of being an excellent leader is. So those two things, to be able to serve and to be submissive, those are two key factors that is not really projected on Black men, or is something that's looked or frowned upon.
I totally agree. Very, very rounded perspective. The problem is Black men are leaders, but they have not been taught that they're leaders. They have not been cultivated to be leaders. And we learn to be leaders from serving, like you said, serving is halfway to true leadership. Because I don't think you ever, even when you become a leader, you never leave being a servant. Right? Servant. That's what we call servant leadership. What is one of the reasons why you think Black men have historically had toxic relationships?
I think the mindset and the mentality of a lot of Black men being in competition, all that kind of stemmed from slavery. So even when they had the strongest slave to fight the next person to see who's going to come out on top, it was all about competition stemming back then. So I think the shift in the mindset is number one. It's not about political power. It's not about elevating in your career. It's not. That is important. Don't get me wrong. But if we don't shift this, if we don't shift the way that we think and the way that we perceive and see things, oftentimes Black men, we feel like we're misunderstood. But have we taken the time to understand anything? A lot of us beat our chest to say, hear me, understand me. When I have a motto saying it's better to understand than to be understood. Because the man that understands is probably the most powerful man in the room. And to speak on the judicial system and law enforcement, I really don't foresee any of that ever being in benefit of a Black man. The Black man has been in captivity, whether it's physically or mentally, as being shook for long before I came along. So I think that plays a major part, and I don't think we teach on that enough. We spoke on, as you say, your father was kind of in and out. My father passed away when I was 6 years old. However, my brothers and my grandfather, they knew. I may have not known the importance of having a positive role model, a male role model, a black role model in my life, but they knew that, so they sought me, and they would have me under their wings. And it wasn't all good, it wasn't all bad, but it was about, number one, understanding life and how this game goes, understanding and being true to yourself. And I just think, like, as we come of age and we understand what we see and what's needed, I commend you every time I see you, Apostle, that you see that and you have no problem sowing and pouring into other individuals' lives, especially young Black men. And I think it needs to be more of that. That needs to be the new norm. And I think our community involvement, our coaches, the Pee Wee League coaches, those things that was of vital importance 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it has since diminished.
One of the challenges that I think we as Black men face is that the inequality and injustices that have been imputed upon us because of the pigmentation of our skin has certainly been a major disadvantage to our psyche, our conduct, and our behavior. I think that our conduct and behavior is learned, and it is learned out of certain intentional conditions. And these conditions have been influenced upon the black community, and especially black men, since slavery and before, probably. But certainly in America, we can associate our behavior and the circumstances around our lives as a result of evil. Therefore, we must recognize that law enforcement is looked upon as I guess you said, a military response agency, where it is established to protect the investments and the interests of Anglo America from Black America. And as a result of that, you have a conflict. And that conflict arises out of racism. Simply, plain, and clear.
If I had to give one word to sum all these up, toxic relationships between black men and other black men and women that they're relationship with, and law enforcement is power. It's power struggles.
That's right.
Power struggles. Like, so quickly. I look at other black men, like I said, and y'all have already said, so I won't belabor the point. You know, if you feel like you have to protect your domain, another brother comes in who can push you off your square, so to speak, then your job is to oppose him. All right, black women, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Some of the black women may get mad, but it's just my perspective. Of course, like Pastor Antonio says, it goes back to slavery. You know, when you have black men being beat, being raped, being humiliated in front of their women and children, being pulled away from women and children, it's in a message that the black man can't protect the black woman. Let's just be honest. So this has been going on for 400 years. Then you have Emancipation Proclamation, Reconstruction. Then you go to the Nadir, which is one of the darkest periods in this history in terms of racial violence against blacks. Lynching begins in this season, right? And so now you have these black men who can't defend themselves against these white mobs. They get no justice in the criminal justice system because it's street justice. So you're saying, black women, I can't protect you. I can't be there for you. Come to civil rights, you know? And so you have all these periods of history where these subtle signs are being sent that black men cannot be dependent on. Even though it's not their fault, they cannot be dependent on. They cannot be trusted. They cannot be looked to for protection and support. And now in our modern context, now hear me, I'm not against interracial relationships at all. So hear me clearly. When you look at media, what's being portrayed, most of the black women who are leading in Hollywood, their counterpart are white men. What message is being sent? Why is not their counterpart a black man? So that's one thing. So that's one thing. So we have decades, even hundreds of years of these messages being sent to black women. They can't depend on black men. And then black women are also have been, be careful with blessing, because I won't be like other white brothers talking about white blessing, okay? So black women have had an opportunity to advance in ways that black men have not. And black men have been systemically set up to fail through the prison industrial complex, through education, through the drug epidemic that hit certain communities, through violence and all manner of things that have caused black men in some ways to be behind and black women to be able to move ahead. I think one of those things happened is, again, power struggle. Black women were asked, are you going to continue to stay with the black struggle? Or are you going to join the women's struggle? Now, mind you, both struggles are valid for black women. So I get it. You're black and you're a woman. And so I think some women said, listen, we've been in a struggle, civil rights for black men. Now it's time for women to get their liberation. And so as they begin to move with the women liberation movement, they were able to move ahead as black and woman, when black men are still here, still trying to fight to just be a human, period.
The way that this is ever going to work, right? I mean, to eliminate inequality and injustice, and to, I guess, diffuse what is modern day as what black men face on a day-to-day basis, is the shifting of the mindset. my question to you all is, which would be easier to do? Because you need both, but which would be easier to do to shift the mindset of the black man who's been going through, who's been told he's not good enough, who's been told he has to do X, Y, and Z, he's been told he has to lead and not follow. He's been told all of these things over the years, generations, decades, and decades, or the shifting of the white man's mentality that they are those deputies that were put in position for slavery, or they are the superior being, because they both have to come to an understanding to be equally important. So to you all, I'm going to ask, which do you think come first, and how do we get to the finish line with both?
They have to both happen simultaneously. I mean, there has to be, black men need to be empowered and have their sense of self strengthened. But also at the same time, I think it's got to happen in the white community. White people have to have hard conversations with other white folk. Because, as James Baldwin said, this is not a Negro problem.
Exactly.
Because that was the popular term. And I remember hearing that growing up as a kid in the 60s, the Negro problem. It wasn't no Negro problem. It was a white folks problem. Racism is a problem of whites, and it has produced this thing called whiteness. But we also see, and where I see some hope in terms of the protests that have taken place throughout the world after George Floyd's murder, was there are white people who are angry about this as well, and that it's not just us, and there are people of other colors as well, and other ethnicities and other identities.
I just think it's a balancing act. We just got to know where we fit in this revolution.
Yeah.
And wherever we fit will determine, who changes, who shifts for black people or white people. But black folks got a lot of shifting to do too, right? You got every white person that tries to say something, we gonna counsel them. We can't counsel every white person. You can't compare what Rod Parsley said to what Lou Giglio said. I'm sorry. It's just not the same. And so so black folks will counsel both of them. We can't counsel both of them. What Rod Parsley said was a whole bunch of rubbish. We still don't know what Rod Parsley was talking about.
What did he say?
Pops, I ain't got time to recount, but basically, in essence, what he was saying was that, black folks basically need to suck it up and get on board with the overall American agenda. Basically, that's what I took from what Rod Parsley said. And then he come back and try to clean it up. But what Lou Giglio was trying to do was trying to reframe the whole discussion around white privilege. Even the thing I put on my post the other day, white privilege shuts down. And I've had dozens of my white friends say, David, it shuts me down. So I'm like, can we find another word, influence or advantage? So I think Lou Giglio was trying to come up with a way to reframe the conversation so it doesn't go down, and he used the word blessing, which I don't think was the right word choice, sorry, but he said it, and now he's being crucified, quite frankly. But it is what it is. Now, listen, we got to cut across the field. In this current climate that we have, what is one of the best things that black fathers and black men can do for their families and their communities right now? We
have got to be the leaders and take on the functional role that we've been called to. And the key to all of this, I'm convinced, is that we've got to be men of love. Love is the bond of completion. It is God's descriptive being and makeup of means to be successful. And if a father for his children can really love them with that agape kind of love that penetrates to their lives, that they will maximize their potential, that he would add value to them by listening and talking and sharing with them undividedly, that he would resource them, see where their areas of expertise lies and what they need in order to go to the next level. See, a good father is also a good resource. A good father, as a good leader, will always get his child to replicate replicate themselves. We've got to make sure that in every way that good continues and the legacy of greatness is maintained by passing the baton on.
We have to be about the business of affirming our Black men, those who are in our family, our sons, grandsons, friends, siblings, and others in this crucial moment. I'm reminded of the scripture, I think it's in Psalm 8, where it says, God has made human beings a little lower than the angels, but crowned them with glory and honor. And we have to affirm that glory and honor that is within all of us as human beings, and not to engage in any behavior or any kind of activity that would demean our humanity, or in particular to demean our Black humanity. I think it's important to affirm and empower Black men and our families and elsewhere, with the notion to kind of borrow the motto of Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, which has been their motto for many years, to be unapologetically Christian and unashamedly Black. And because we have to hold on to the particularity of our identities as Black Christians, not Christians who happen to be Black or Black people who happen to be Christian, but as Black Christians. We have to own that for itself, because that in and of itself is an affirmation of who we are and who God created us to be.
What I would take from it is we have to condition ourselves, as well as our youth, our community, to have the endurance to persevere. I think we have to teach our kids, teach ourselves, teach our community how to deal with not only success but failures. We talk about how do we handle success, or if we hit the lottery, or if we became successful, what does that look like? But do we ever have a strategy if it doesn't go quite that way? And that's in both the marketplace and the kingdom place. I think you have to have the balance of the two just to be successful and moving forward. Both are as vital now than they ever have been. And going back to the 2020 vision of having that insight, having the strategy, and having a well executed plan, I think will propel everyone, not only the Black community, not only the youth, but I think all people. If we're all on that level with that same mindset, I think that'd be the first step in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I thank you so much for your wisdom, for your insight, for your expertise. I pray that you all have been blessed by this roundtable.